So your church has a live stream and you're even using YouTube, but are you podcasting? Does your church have a podcast? Should your church have a podcast? That's what we're going to talk about today. Hey guys, welcome to another example of awesomeness. This is the Church Media Guy Show, and my name is Dave Curley, and I'm the founder of ChurchTrainingAcademy.com, which is a place where you and I and other media-minded people come together to learn how to use and exploit media, technology, podcasting, all the cool digital stuff so that we can take the gospel to the world. With me, as always, every Friday at this exact moment, except when it's not, is my partner, Justin Nava.
What's going on, Dave? What's going on, everyone watching? Yes, I am here even when I'm not, because I can still, when I'm not physically here, I can still watch the stream and communicate in the chat and yell at Dave through the chat whenever he says something dumb, which is the power of live streaming. And if you're watching this time shifted, if you're watching this after the fact through the podcast or the YouTube, again, the power of media, which is what we're talking about today with Paul. I'm really excited for this. And Chris and Ryan and Pence and James watching in the live stream, I think they're excited too.
I think so too. It's going to be really cool. Paul has been a friend of mine for a number of years. He is a podcaster that, he's been doing stuff before podcasting, but once podcasting actually happened and actually became a thing, he started just going crazy with it. Not only doing his own, but also teaching people how to do it. He's a really good dude. I think you guys are going to get a lot out of our talk with him.
And now for our feature presentation.
Paul Colligan is on the cutting edge of the world of podcasting. His company, The Podcast Partnership, leverages technology to expand reach and revenue for businesses and creates digital influencers with the simple sound of the human voice. He's the best-selling author of How to Podcast, How to Stream Video 2016, and YouTube Strategies 2016. He speaks all over the world on podcasting strategies for events like Macworld, Google Tech Talks, Microsoft, Social Media Marketing World, Podcast Movement, and everyone in between. He's a husband and father, and he and I have orbited each other's universes for the better part of 10 years, and frankly, he's a genius. Paul, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to hang with the Church Media guys.
Thanks for the kind words. Will you send a copy of this to Mom?
Yes, I definitely.
Okay, cool.
Yes. Now, Paul, if folks are not familiar with you, the most of our audience, is a church ministry audience and stuff. And we do have a lot of geeks and stuff in there, but the world that you and I have run in together for the last however long is a tech world, is a business world, is a entertainment world, that sort of stuff. And so our viewers may not know who you are and stuff. So I kind of want to do like some rapid fire Q&A, just sort of real quick,
sure,
so they can find out where your soul is. And this is some deep probing stuff, and it's kind of like the Barbara Walters thing. So if you start to cry or something, I understand, but I want people to get to know your heart.
She's nearby.
Okay, so let's start off with Coke or Pepsi.
Oh, Coke.
Okay. So like sushi or steak?
Steak.
Wait a sec. You live in the Pacific Northwest and you don't like sushi?
I like sushi, but steak's the option. Come on.
Okay. Dog or cat?
Dog.
This one is probably the deepest probing one, I guess. And if you need to take a moment, that's okay.
Okay.
Star Trek or Star Wars?
Come on, Star Wars.
Okay. Good.
Okay. Okay, we can let him in. We can continue.
All right, that's good. Okay, yeah, we can do it.
I'm supposed to be the bad guy, and if you say Star Trek, I'm supposed to say, "Oh, Dave, your dad's calling me. I think he's having some kind of emergency." You better
Yeah.
So Justin and I, as you know, and as our audience know, we teach churches and ministries how to use and exploit media and technology to share the gospel all over the place. And when it comes to podcasting, I know you're in podcasting at large, basically, and we focus specifically on churches and ministries and stuff. But your insights and the things that I've learned from you personally over the years from listening to the podcast report and conversations that we've had at events or quick emails here and there and stuff, I've learned so much from you, and I wanted to introduce you to our audience and get just for you to share some of your insights on the podcasting industry where podcasting you think is going and how churches can benefit from it. And as I remember, you've got a pretty cool story on a church that has been podcasting for about a decade with a lot of success, right?
Well, a decade plus, and it's my own church. And you actually chatted about those books. It is the one podcast that has been a case study through all of my books because they're still doing it.
Mm.
A lot of podcasts have come in and out. They're still doing it. And what was exciting was it was never a question of tech. It was never a question of microphone shootouts or some of the things us nerds like to do. It was a question of, oh my goodness, we can do that? How cool is that? And I taught the church secretary how to do it. And then about 6 years later, they upgraded to auditions. So we had to, about a 15-minute upgrade lesson and switched hosting providers a couple of times. It did a couple of things, but this thing has been running for 13 years, like clockwork, longer than the iPhone. And, as a consultant, we kind of measure our time by how much time we spent working on it. I literally spent less than 2 hours total in this entire thing. And that's neat because, we want our others to take our work and run with it. And so what's neat is we get on a regular basis, people visit the church and how'd you hear about us? Well, I found the podcast actually, which is a fascinating thing for us. And so it just runs like clockwork, and it's become part of who we are. And it's become part of our identity and neat little things like, in the American church today, we love to say things like, oh, I love the teaching so much. Well, now we can say, hey, the teaching's available Monday morning. Go downstairs and work with the kids.
Yeah.
And, we can say other things that is really, really, really powerful. At the same time, our main teaching pastor, he teaches over at Multnomah University, and he teaches a preaching class. And he used to have to tell his students, all right, you got to come out and watch me do a couple of these to deconstruct. And now he says, plug in your iPhone, and listen to what I've done. So it's made everybody's lives easier. It's increased attendance. I've been teaching middle school Sunday school since Ronald Reagan was president.
Wow.
Yeah. And something I need help, but I miss most of the sermons, but I don't because I get them a couple of days later, and that's the power of what we have here. And that's the power of what we're playing with. And nobody's burning CDs, nobody's making cassettes, nobody's making anything. We just put it online and it's available. And so it is literally my most successful podcast in my entire career. And I'm kind of proud of that.
When I do a search for and have, for a church's podcast or something like that, I either go straight to iTunes because that's kind of the de facto, or
Bingo,
I do it.
Bingo.
I'm sorry?
Bingo.
Yeah. Or I go and do a search in Google that leads me to the podcast page or the sermon archive at, Bill and Ted's ExcellentChurch.com. And then I hit the button to subscribe or what have you from there. Is serendipity happening more, I guess, now because of podcasting?
Well, what's neat is because nobody owns it, because nobody's charging a licensing fee to use it, because everybody benefits by having it, it truly has become ubiquitous. And yeah, Google just got their app, but like you just said, we've been using Google to find our podcast for some time now. And so what's neat is, I always joke 80% of your audience is coming from iTunes, 10% of your audience is coming from other, Apple apps. 9% of your audience is coming from, Android, and 1% of your audience is coming from all 7 of the Microsoft phones. But what's cool is if you set it up correctly, you don't need to have a division of your church with a Google strategy.
Right.
And this is what's gorgeous. You don't have to have somebody who understands Stitcher.
Right.
One time at church, the secretary did say, hey, are we on that Stitcher? Somebody asked if we were on Stitcher. Yes, we're on Stitcher. Do I have to do anything for that? No, set you up once. And that's the beauty of this is that it's just there. And, and I welcome Google and I've got some, I think there's some perspective that needs to be played for people who think that Google's going to change their download numbers and that type of thing. But anytime it's easier to listen to a podcast, we all win. I was at an event 6 years ago and Ariana Huffington was there.
Mm-hmm.
And she said something that just changed everything for me in my business. She said, ubiquity is the new exclusivity.
Mm.
Okay. Now I'm going to riff on that for a second. Justin, if you want to jump in, please do. But being everywhere is now how you win. And if you think about it, if you think of any media sensation, think about Lady Gaga, nobody goes to ladygaga.com.
Mm-hmm.
They go to iTunes and listen to Lady Gaga music. They go to YouTube to listen to Lady Gaga video, watch the videos. They go to, whatever paparazzi sites to figure out what Lady Gaga's been up to. Nobody goes to ladygaga.com. And if they do, ladygaga.com is really just links to YouTube and links to iTunes and links to this kind of stuff, because we got to be everywhere. So you take someone who's doing a podcast who truly can be everywhere, and then they're competing with Star Trek Discovery that can't be everywhere, you got a really good chance. Mm-hmm. So this is really, really exciting. And this is why I love the fact that we're on, you've heard my argument. I don't think this Google thing's going to change a bit, but it enforces the idea that whatever phone you got, you can listen to what it is that I'm doing.
Right.
And I think a good way to look at it right now, if you want to see the future, pick up an Apple TV or go to an Apple store and look at it. You can push the button and you can say, I want to watch Doctor Who. Mm-hmm. And it will show you all the places that Doctor Who's available, which is really interesting. Mm-hmm. And they're slowly but surely adding new people to that search. Mm-hmm. And whenever you want to figure out where things are going, look at people's, where the money is. Mm-hmm. And the more powerful, Apple makes their money in powerful devices. Apple makes their money in devices that work. And there's some on the service side of stuff, and their TV thing's probably coming. But the fact of the matter is, there's no reason for them not to integrate podcast search into the Apple TV search. Mm-hmm. Now, I had a client, really smart guy, multi-millionaire, gorgeous show, 4-camera shoot, edited by USC film grads. I mean, a brilliant guy. And he says to me, he goes, Paul, how come when I go to my Apple TV and I go to podcast, and I search for my show, only the audio version's there? Good question. Give me your login and password. Let's figure out what's going on. So, look at the login and password. And you know what the answer was? Let's play guess. Justin, what do you think the answer was? Why do you think it wasn't popping up?
Something wrong with his RSS feed.
That's a nerd thought. Dave, what do you think the problem was?
Because 90% of the podcast or the podcast
nerd
content is audio.
Nerd.
He hadn't made one?
He didn't know what the difference between a video podcast and being on YouTube was.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I've had that argument. I've had people say,
yeah.
In fact, between you and me, I'm gonna smack my partner here for a sec, because when Justin and I joined forces, he was asking what the content delivery strategy was and all that, and I said we live stream to Facebook and YouTube. We upload to YouTube, and that's what gets put into the blog episode, the blog on the thing.
Sure.
And then we do a video podcast and we do an audio podcast. And he said, why in the world would we waste time publishing a video podcast? And
it's a good question to ask.
It is a good question. And
thank you.
It is.
At least give me that.
Yes, because he's a millennial, Paul, and he just doesn't understand. But I told him it's because there are plenty of people, especially in the church space, where you've got a good crop of older people who still sit down in front of a television, even if they have an Apple TV, and look for something,
Yeah. And if they're looking for your church,
search hard for it.
And if they're looking for your church, they should find it.
Right. Exactly.
Tip number one. And wherever you happen to be, Right.
Yeah. I love that. Ubiquity is, what'd you say? Ubiquity
is the new exclusivity.
Yeah. I like that. And, there's been people like, Pat Flynn for years has said, that to be successful in an online business, you need to be everywhere if you possibly can. Be everywhere. And that's a huge chore to try to do that stuff. But when it comes to podcasting, it's really not, because with RSS, and I know we're getting really nerdy here for those who wouldn't maybe not understand it, don't worry. That's why you need to be a churchtrainingacademy.com member.
And where can they find more information about churchtrainingacademy.com, Dave?
At churchtrainingacademy.com/join. You can learn how to be a CTA insider and learn how to put all of this great knowledge to work. close parentheses. The RSS and having a host, you put it up there one time, and the hard part is finding the other service that you need to plug that information into so that it then just automatically starts showing up in it, like setting up on Stitcher or setting up in iTunes or Google Play or what have you. So it is possible, I think, to be everywhere. If there's a venue that can take an RSS feed, that your content can be there. Am I missing something?
No. And the cool thing is, the future of this is that they're going to find us anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I love it when my clients come to me and go, "Can you get me on Overcast?" I'm like, sure, I can get you on Overcast. And for those of you who don't know what Overcast is, it's a iPhone power user podcast app that how should we say this, borrows information from the iTunes database so that you don't have to tell them anything. And as a result, you're automatically in Overcast. And one of the big announcements from Google is Google, because they're surfing the web, is finding podcasts anyway. So your podcast actually might be in the Google search now. And again, it's a bit of a mess, but it's a way to look to what's happening in the future. Mm-hmm. And yeah, put everywhere you should be, but don't be surprised if you show up in some places where you never submitted in the first place.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of like when you start uploading to YouTube, and then all of a sudden you start showing up on one of those other video websites where they start pulling in stuff off of YouTube and adding it to their thing. You're like, I'm there.
Yeah. And I remember once I was traveling, and I was listening to a podcast in the hotel room, and at the time I was trying to crack the Stitcher nut. It's not necessarily my preferred provider, but I was listening to it. Right. And I was listening to Stitcher, and this podcast guru was talking on the episode about how bad Stitcher is. And about how he'd never let his podcast be on Stitcher because only losers use Stitcher. You know, and there were so many feelings at that episode. You know, A, I'm not a loser. B, why wouldn't you want to be on Stitcher? Like, yeah, I mean, they got issues, but we all got issues, you know? Right. And get your show out there, you know? So, yeah, and that's the beautiful thing. So you're going to start showing up. You know, right now, one of my biggest client problems is I have clients who go, you know, I search for me, and all these random podcast sites show up in search, you know, before my website, you know, because they are being picked up everywhere. And I'm like, wait a minute, so your problem is that dozens of websites have picked up your content? This is a problem? Why is this a problem?
Yeah.
You know, and you got to think that through strategy-wise, but, you know, and part of ubiquity being the new exclusivity is your website doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
That's hard.
Yeah, it is. We tell folks that you have to don't. Who is it that said
it's awkward?
It said, I know. I'm trying to remember who it is that said it. Oh, it's what's his face from Copyblogger, Brian. He always said, "Don't be a digital sharecropper." He said you need to have what you own. Have your own building in the neighborhood, basically, that you own and stuff, because you don't know what could happen. Facebook, and we've told our audience that kind of part of disaster proofing your ministry and your channels and your broadcasts and stuff is, you know, yes, be on Facebook. Don't rely on Facebook to be everything that you need it to be, because they may decide that preaching the gospel is hate speech, so they are just going to rule that stuff out, and now you're stuck. You know, same thing with Google and YouTube and stuff. You know, who knows what's going to happen in the future? Be there and use those tools. Don't rely on them 100%. If you have something that you own, if you have your podcast, you know, with Libsyn or Podbean or whoever, then that's an account that you own, and you're paying for that space, and they're going to have to fire you and lose your money if they want to, you know, if they want to get rid of you and stuff. So,
and let's even be more realistic. You know, this podcast, when I started the church podcast way back when, we actually had a meeting about our MySpace strategy. You know, so forget the whole apocalyptic end times type of take on this. Right. Stuff just might change.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You know, and you still want to have that building or whatnot, but it's not the most important thing.
Right.
You know, and there are nerds who go, "Oh, I wish you hadn't found me on iTunes." What? You know, or, you know, I had a guy once who told me, if they don't want to listen to me by podcast, I don't want them to listen to me. I'm like, what? You know, get over it.
Yeah, get over yourself.
And especially for churches.
Yeah, yeah. That's and that's one of the things that we talk about a lot, is that you need to basically be getting your information out there and giving it to
Whoever wants it,
to the audience the way that they are going to receive it. You know, was it Justin? We were talking about some of these social apps and stuff, and Justin said something in one of our group coaching calls that nowadays teenagers, they still will go over to each other's house and sit down and play games and sit down and talk and stuff like that, but that is just one small portion of their interaction. They will do that exact same thing virtually through WhatsApp or through one of the other social things, through Instagram stories or through Instagram direct messages or something like that. And the thing is, you have to accept that is the event, not just talking about the event and we'll meet you at the event. That's now the event. And that's the same thing. Some people have the reality of they cannot physically go and join the church service on Sunday morning because they're working third shift at Lockheed Martin. And so when the service is starting, they're coming back from lunch or they're just getting home to go to sleep or something like that. It's just the realities of life. So being out there where they can find you and stuff still gets the message out, and they can still be a virtual member of whatever body that is or whatever group that is. So yeah. Tell me what you put the one word you should consider when planning your podcast. What is that?
Mm-hmm. Most of us, well, what's the number one question they ask when they want to know what's going on with the podcast?
Oh,
come on, downloads.
Yeah,
how many downloads are we getting?
Yeah, they want to know what that is. I'm focused so much on don't focus on that.
Right.
But yeah, you're right. It's what's the ROI and how many downloads are we getting, and is it worth the time and the effort? Yeah. Stop
thinking about downloads. Start thinking about impact.
Okay.
That's it. What kind of impact is the podcast having? I said on the podcast report a while ago, most podcasters would freak out if there was only one person listening to their podcast. But if that one person was Mark Zuckerberg, you do that podcast all day long. Mm-hmm. So it's not downloads, and especially for the church, it's not downloads, it's impact. And we want to think along that term. And like you said, the business of church is a real thing. And we always wonder, how will this affect giving, and how will this affect some of the other things? And but the fact of the matter is when you think about impact, that changes the game. Mm-hmm. That gives you the focus, that gives you the opportunity to do the right thing. And so what kind of impact are we going to have? What kind of impact can we have? How can we increase our impact? These are the questions that want to go to play. And that guy who works the third shift at Lockheed, he won't always.
Right, exactly.
And if he's been listening to your church service for a while, he's going to want to hang out with that group.
That's right.
The waitress, the mom who just doesn't want to bring a screaming kid to church. In a couple of years, that kid's going to stop screaming. And if you're truly having impact, unless it's my kid, but that's a whole other story. And if you truly think about impact and you truly walk in impact, it changes the game. It changes the conversation. Mm-hmm. So how many downloads is good? No. What kind of impact are you looking to have?
Yeah, I did that. I used that. Talking about throwing haymakers. I did that when I was talking about live streaming, and is it worth it? Is it worth the investment? Is it worth the time and all that? And I said, think about it this way. If someone is out there and they are asking questions, they're life is not good or something, and they're searching around, and because your sermon at some point talks about something that answers their question, and you did your SEO right, and they ask the question, and there you are giving the answer, and then they come to faith in Christ, and it's because you had live streamed the service and also posted it up to YouTube. That is one more person that is going to be in the kingdom. Yeah. Now, if you're worried about, is it worth the time? Is it worth the effort? Then basically what you're saying is, I don't care if one person, this person can go to hell for all I care. that you have to be thinking like that. Would you go on a mission trip to feed people in a village and share the gospel there? And would you think it was a success if one person came to Christ versus 200 came to Christ? You better, because that's the whole point. That's the whole point of what we do.
Well, here's how I see it. I mean, really, you're talking about downloads. To put it into more of a traditional sense, it's like butts in seats. We talk about, we want to grow our church, but what's better, a small church of 100 where 80 people are out there serving the community and sharing the gospel, or a church of 2,000 that's doing absolutely nothing?
Where 80 people are serving the community, and
or we're 2,000, we're only 80.
Yeah.
I mean, I would rather be a part of a smaller church that's everyone is involved versus a larger church where people are just coming and sitting down. So downloads are important because people are listening, but if it's making an impact, I would be okay with smaller downloads. That means that
and we're at a point now where even the expense part is going down so deep.
It's minimal for sure,
and it's just crazy. I was talking to a client, and he said, there's no way I can afford. I said, you got to up your video game, and it was actually a Zoom conference like we're doing right now. I said, you got to up your video game. And he goes, well, I can't afford like what you're doing. Like, this is under $500, buddy.
Yeah, exactly.
What? And
I do a TV show. I do a broadcast television show with two $250 Canon Vixia cameras. So
it's not hard.
Okay.
Yeah. And so even at that point, it's funny because it used to be a question mark. Now heck, just put an iPhone on a tripod up there. It's just not that hard anymore. And all the more reason to respond, Justin, is that because come on, let's do this.
I think that should just be the title of the show. Come on,
people.
come on. Paul, let me ask you one more question as we reach our time limit here. I read that you might not want to call it a podcast. What's that about?
Well, there's two types of people in the world.
The awesome like us, and then everybody.
Right. The awesome and everybody else.
Those who know RSS feeds.
No. Well, actually, that as well. But that will get you nowhere in life. Those who know what a podcast is, and those who don't. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Those who know what a podcast is don't care.
Because they already know.
Those who don't know what a podcast is get confused. There's no benefit to calling it a podcast. I went home to visit my dear mother one day. My dear mother, who still believes to this day that she cannot listen to what her son does because she does not have an apple. Mom, I will buy you an apple. Oh no, too confusing. One day I was updating her. We all go home, we update mom's stuff, so I updated her Kindle Fire. And you know what she had on there? She had the iHeartRadio app. Now, I didn't even know that mom knew how to install apps. Okay. And so first question, this is a whole other topic. Like, Mom, why do you have the iHeartRadio app? I said, well, the radio told me to, which is, of course, that's a whole nother issue. We got to deal with that. That's a whole nother episode.
I love that.
I do too. Alexa keeps telling me to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And so, but the thing was, I go, well, Mom, I'm on the iHeartRadio app. Thinking the whole, and you know what she says?
You have a radio show?
No, she says, no, son, that's just for radio. I go, no, Mom, I'm on the iHeartRadio. And then she said, are you doing radio now? She's so proud of her son. I've finally arrived, and
you made good.
Sure, Mom, I'm doing radio, like if that works for you, that's absolutely fine. And that's the status. See, if you say, how many people know what a podcast is? You're lucky if half the room raises their hand.
Mm-hmm.
If you say who has a smartphone in their pocket, 95% of the room raises their hand.
Mm-hmm.
And
heck, you don't even have to say smartphone. You just say phone, and it's by default smart.
Yeah, there's nothing left. Yeah, and so if you take away the word podcast, you take away, and I know nerds, we love to get excited about the technology and whatnot, but but especially getting in the church, it's like, hey, you can get the sermon whenever, wherever, however you want. You don't have to have an Apple if you're my mom.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have different things. And just, I've never been in a situation where calling it a podcast is beneficial.
Yeah, it's I've been thinking speaking of that story about your mom, that reminds me. You remember back in the mid and late 90s when Tech TV was a thing, and Leo Laporte had the screensaver show, he and Pat Norton and all that. I remember after I'd been doing this stuff for quite a while, that when Mom and Dad found out that I knew and was friends with Leo Laporte and Pat Norton, then I had arrived.
Yeah, exactly.
I was now successful at this podcasting and streaming video thing,
because they're on real TV. Yeah,
real TV. They were
burned out, and I mean, it's colossal financial disaster, but because and not because of Patrick and Leo. It was
no, not at all. No,
but yeah, that was a failure.
Yeah, Dad knew that I was something when I told him that Jim Louderback was a friend, because Jim Louderback was publishing PC Magazine for.
Yep.
Anyway, I'm sorry. Close parentheses on that. I just think that's funny that our parents think like that. It's their frame of reference.
Right. Well, and it's a good chunk of the world's frame of reference, and that's the thing. We gotta think to them. We gotta serve them, and again, it's impact, not downloads.
That's exactly right. So, okay. So getting into semantics and stuff, you can get our sermons on demand,
sermons whenever you want, wherever you want, however you want.
Yeah. Just ask Siri or ask Google or ask Alexa.
Or come up and, one of our nice church nerds will help you set it up on your phone.
Right.
Come up to the front afterwards.
Yeah. See, that's not a bad idea, is having at the Welcome Center, having your Genius bar, basically, where they can.
Yeah. We had a client who launched their podcast. It was a financial services company in a niche town. It was actually kind of funny. Actually, the story is more relevant than now that I'm thinking of it. You know how in a lot of small towns, like Saturday morning from 9 to 10's the car guy, and from 10 to 11 the garden guy. Well, this was the 10 to 11 finance guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and the message used to be, if you want to hear from this guy, listen to the local talk station from 10 to 11 or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
And all we did was we took that radio show, we chopped out the commercials, we made it a podcast, and now you can listen to him whenever you want, wherever you want, however you want. And that was the only message. I saw the guy in the event, he came up and hugged me, because it's like, we've got 5 new clients. He's a financial planner, so this is the clients pretty much forever as long as you treat him right.
Mm-hmm.
And he was absolutely thrilled, and he changed nothing. Just sent us the file, and we set it up and chopped it up for him. But when they did the launch, we were trying to figure out how to get his community listening. And what was funny was every year his company throws a really big barbecue in the park. They invite all their clients and all their friends, and the sack races, and that good traditional barbecue. And they just set up a station. They got somebody to show you on the Android phones, somebody to show you on the iPhone, and they brought in a consultant remotely in case somebody happened to have a Microsoft phone. And and then the whole thing, they were setting up people for, and if you look at the stats for that show, it's really good.
Mm.
And a good chunk of the people come to the website to click play because they're not even sure about getting on the phone, but he's getting new clients.
Mm-hmm.
If they would have said it was a podcast, or emphasized the podcast, a podcast not for me, that's for the kids,
right.
Like Justin.
Mm-hmm. And the more that happens and stuff, the less relevant the term is, and it's just, you can just go and ask Google to find it for you.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot of sense. That brings up another thing. We've got these smart home devices that have really, really taken off over the last 12 months and are now really starting to come into their own. Where do you see, podcasting aside, because you can, with like on Alexa, with the TuneIn integration, you can say, hey, play the podcast report, and it'll start.
Not just tune in, but keep on going.
Yeah. But so my question is, with these devices and stuff, where is podcasting and media on demand going? And what about things like Alexa's daily briefing and stuff? How do you see all that fitting in?
Well,
especially in a church world.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is, it's kind of all the same world.
Yeah. I agree.
It took podcasting 14 years to hit mainstream. When Adam first launched the daily source code,
right, mm-hmm.
to the declaring of it as mainstream from Edison Research, who I trust their numbers very, very much, took 14 years.
Mhm.
And we're talking, and we've spent the last 46 minutes talking about it. So it's worked. It's been impactful. We're very happy about it.
Mhm. We're
It
building our
took,
lives around it.
it took the smart speakers 1 year
Right.
to hit mainstream.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens when you have a multi-gazillion dollar advertising budget behind you. They're part of our lives. And when I set up to do a call like this, check this out. Okay, Google, turn off the lights. Okay, Google, turn on the lights. Okay, turning 2 lights.
Yeah.
So it's integrated into our daily process, and they're still figuring out their flavor. They're figuring out their things, but I mean, we're getting up and we're talking to devices. What's the weather going to be?
Mhm.
Can I listen to the latest episode of that? Can I do that? You definitely want to explore that capacity. Like you said, on the Alexa side of things, tune in. By default, if you're in TuneIn, you're on the Alexa. It's clunky.
Yeah.
It's messy. It's not that good. But it's there. You can get an Alexa skill written. A skill is the Alexa word for app. It's basically their version of the app.
Yeah.
You can get one. I got one done for the podcast report. Truth be told, Libsyn, which is the host I recommend to everybody, Libsyn has an Alexa skill that you can utilize. Right now, Amazon has a big backlog of orders, so I have clients calling me pretty much every week. When am I going to be on Alexa? Google's not quite there yet. There are only 3 of the Microsoft speakers left, so I wouldn't worry about that one too much.
Right.
That's going to be part of it.
Yeah.
And what's interesting about the Google device is that you can actually listen to. Let's pretend this is an Android.
Mm-hmm.
I could be listening to this on the way home, and not even tell it to stop. But when I get out of the car, and the Bluetooth connection stops it, I could go back into the house and my Google, because of course I'm a nerd, I have every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Google can actually resume from where we're doing, like Netflix. We watch Netflix, on the iPad, and we go downstairs, we continue it. Google's already doing that. iTunes will be doing that soon. It's a huge part of it, and it's a huge part of the ubiquity. And if we're everywhere, and if we can even just speak the name and the podcast comes out, I mean, that's fantastic. Something that you want to, something you want to integrate into, and something you want to be part of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The morning briefing you spoke to, all the devices have some version of a morning briefing, morning update. I built one and it was fun, and 3 people listened to it, and I think it's a consumer change that might be a while. You got to think, what kind of impact would that have, and what will you do with that? But it's all there. And the cool thing is Amazon wants to sell more Alexas. I mean, we're recording this on Prime Day. Happy Prime Day, Dave. Happy Prime Day, Justin.
Happy Prime Day.
And in the meantime, Google's giving away their little Google Home Minis. I think if you sneeze now, you get one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And so they're coming, and the connected TVs, Kindle. I just ordered this morning the adapter that makes your Kindle Fire a Kindle or an Alexa Show.
Yeah.
And it's just coming all over the place. And what's going to happen is, and this is where the whole podcast thing comes, we're gonna tell our devices, play Sunday's church sermon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to play it. And it might be our iPhone, it might be our Google phone, it might be a smart speaker, it might be a smart TV set. But because we're everywhere, it's just going to know. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think as we get into AI and stuff, that our preferences, our habits, as we move around our own house, some of that stuff will be, and I know this is scary, but some of that stuff will be kind of cataloged so that it knows that that when I go and get in the car, I usually want to listen to an audiobook or something. So when I get in the car, the audiobook that I was listening to while I was mowing 6 hours ago now resumes. And because it's Tuesday morning, and Tuesday morning I have this routine that I do at the house or something, that's when I'm going to want to listen to something. So when I walk into the room, these things are going to be happening and stuff. And again, that goes back to the ubiquity of being everywhere, so that your message can get out. And that's, like you said, it for a church, for a business, for a ministry, for a personal brand or anything like that. That's just kind of the way it is now, and the way it's going. So that
and what you want to do is you want to do 2 things. A, keep thinking about the content. Okay. Give the tech over to someone where that is their gifting.
Mhm.
And then that tech person should be really smart and should probably join some sort of church training academy or something that allows them to stay up to date with what's going on, so that when Google announces something, when Amazon announces something, when, I don't know, at some point I think Microsoft might get back into the game. Be up to date with that kind of thing would be really, really smart, because the impact, that I spoke to, which is a business need as well as a faith need, becomes part of the process. But what's neat is realize that you're creating content that can be put on any device.
Mhm.
I so let it. I did an event a couple years ago, had a client who basically said, A, talk about podcasting for 10 minutes, B, make my podcast look good. And so I was going into the stats, and this country, Turkmenistan, popped up in the stats, and the guy had had a couple of dozen downloads from Turkmenistan.
Wow.
And I didn't know much about that country, and I look it up, and Turkmenistan has banned Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, all the social media. Only 5% of the country has it. It's still under Russian control. Like, the first thing in Turkmenistan and Google, when I looked it up, was like the CIA fact book for the freedom of press issues. I mean, this is a really ravaged country with problems and issues. Yet this guy's podcast was getting downloaded there dozens of times. It made me think about the church, like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It'd
be easier to get through the Great Wall of the digital Great Wall of China.
Yeah. Are your podcasts being downloaded
Right.
in Turkmenistan?
Yeah.
And if your ministry is not to the Turkmenistanian, or whatever the proper term would be, that's fine. But think about that impact. In the next couple of years, a couple more billion people are going to join the internet, and welcome. And wait a minute, Paul, if 2 million people are going to join the internet in the next couple of years, you just said that I have content that can be on any device. Yeah. Including that little phone that they're connecting with, which will be about $10 in some of these countries. Yeah. You think I could reach these people? Yeah. Paul, is there like a church training academy I can go to figure out what to do with this? Yeah. And it's an issue of impact.
Boy, that is a lot. This is one of our longer shows, but
You can edit and post.
no, we can't, because it was all just so valuable, and I
Yeah.
love that we're bringing these people on. And
We hit him with a fire
Paul's
hose on
given-
this one.
Yeah, Paul has given us a lot to think about, a lot to digest, but I think a lot of ammo on, hey, it's time. It is time. The church has been behind the times too much, and podcasting is here. It's here to stay. Everyone else is going to be doing it, and like you and I say, Dave, if they're not listening to you, they're listening to something else, or if you're not somewhere, someone else is there. And just having that presence to be on the podcast app, on the YouTube, on the Apple TV, or on the Apple, just being on those places, even iHeartRadio, sure, Overcast. I love Overcast. I'm not a power user, but it's the easiest one that I use across devices. Just being in all those places, like you said, it's a one-time setup. It's a one-time, get set up, so it's pushing out, and then really it's just uploading and titling, and we get into a little bit more of the meta stuff and discovery and the insiders, but this is it. And then you're putting it out there. You're putting out your replay, your catch up. If you miss it, you want to listen to it again. You miss this part, and you want to share it with a friend. One of the most annoying things is when you share a YouTube video with someone, and then they're like, "Oh, I got this hilarious video. Let me go find it on this website." It's like, no, why isn't it on YouTube?
Yeah.
And so be in those places where everyone is huge, so you can be discovered and easily shared. A lot of good stuff.
Paul, where can folks find out more about you and your business?
I have a book called Get This, How to Podcast. It's available where fine books are sold. And you can pick that up, Amazon and everywhere else. It goes through the process. I actually made a lot of podcasters angry because it's really how to podcast in about 56 pages. Everything else is sort of commentary on what it is that I said. I kind of demystify some of the stuff. PaulColligan.com is the site. Not everybody's going to be able to get in, as I said, but if you go to paulcolligan.com /pick social media network here /Facebook /Twitter /Instagram /YouTube Amazon. That will take you to all those places. Pretty active in social. And, my show, The Podcast Report, I know this will hopefully have a shelf life longer than a week. Right now we're in a summer hiatus, but there are 149 episodes to go back in on, and pretty happy with those. And you can find that where fine podcasts are found. So paulcolligan.com/pick social media. How to Podcast is the name of the book, and The Podcast Report is the show. If you sign up for anything with me, every Tuesday, I just dump out a thing called Heads Up Tuesday, which is all the stuff you need to worry about this Tuesday. And it's funny. It was, I've been doing this now for 20 years, and this is the newsletter I spend the least amount of time on, and it's the one that everybody loves.
Yeah,
I know. Headline link, headline link, headline link, and what's really funny is it's a bit of a market research for me, because I'll do those 5 things. And one of those will get like 8 times the clicks of everything else. And I didn't realize that my audience was as into that. But so I use it for market research as well. And people go, well, how do I get on that but nothing else? I'm sorry, I'm just not that sophisticated. So if you unsubscribe for everything, you're going to lose Heads Up Tuesday. I don't spam much. I sell things every once in a while, but nothing that's going to hurt you. You can always click delete. It'll be okay. It'll hurt my mom, but I'll be okay.
Well, I can vouch that that your stuff actually is good information, and you don't sell all that, but when you do, it's worth it. And I tell
people I believe in.
Yeah. I tell people get it. I mean, because like I said, I've been paying attention to you for a long time, and I've learned a lot from you. So, and yeah, you are considerably older than me.
Oh, that is true.
Dude, thanks for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Justin.
Paul's thoughts on ubiquity and being everywhere and stuff, that ubiquity is the new exclusivity. That is a really interesting thought. And one of the things that is a lot of content creators, people that are both in the secular and even some that are in the church media space and the church the church communication space and all that, have this mantra or have this idea of being everywhere. Okay, so being ubiquitous and stuff, and you can actually go crazy doing that. You can do it successfully, but if you're like any of us, you're going a whole bunch of different directions and all that, and trying to be everywhere all at the same time can get maddening. Okay, I mean, and what I'm talking about is, you're tweeting 4 times a day, you're posting 3 times a day on Facebook. One thing really, really important, and 2 things that are just kind of, things that you're sharing or something. And then you're doing Instagram twice a day, and then you're posting to YouTube, every other day, and you're doing a Facebook Live, twice a week. I mean, look, you can go crazy doing that. So don't even try to do that. But the idea of ubiquity when it comes to podcasting and the media that we are creating, okay? Not talking about our photos and not talking about our conversations and things like that and our engagement and stuff, but I'm talking about just the media, okay? So the service that we're recording, or the Q&A that the pastor does, his Facebook Live or something, these kind of things, because you're podcasting. And if you're not podcasting, you should be podcasting. Because of the podcasting model and the way it's set up, you can basically publish it one time and then have it sent to a whole bunch of different platforms, kind of like a lot of us do with services like Boxcast or Restream.io. And if you can stream to a service once, and then it can syndicate to others. Okay, so when we talk about the ubiquity, we're talking about syndication. So if you're using somebody like Podbean, which is who we recommend, we love it. Our church uses it. But Podbean is fantastic. Go to getpodbean.com, by the way, if you want to get in on using Podbean, because it is the best host out there that I have found. Most flexible and most affordable. It's fantastic. Now, anyway, close parentheses on that. You can basically take your service, and when you publish it to Podbean, you then can turn around and take that RSS feed and submit that to a whole bunch of different places. You submit it obviously to iTunes, but then you can submit it to Google Play, you can submit it to Stitcher, you can submit it to Spotify, and just a ton of different places. That is where the ubiquity and the being everywhere comes in, so that when people are on whatever platform that they use, whatever podcast catcher, podcast app that they use on whatever phone they're using and whatever device, when they do a search in those directories for you, you're showing up. When they do a search for, I can go and do a search for Greg Laurie. He's one of my favorite pastors out there that's not my pastor. He's my digital pastor. He's my remote pastor. Yeah. Anyway, I can do a search for him on all these different platforms, and I can get stuff. And that's the idea. That's the ubiquity. So I highly suggest that if you guys are not podcasting, you do need to be podcasting. If you're not, man, why? Why aren't you? Gee whiz. Anyway, I hope this has been helpful for you guys. If you want to learn more stuff like this, if you want to learn how to take your media ministry, your communications, your church marketing, all that sort of stuff, and kick it up to the next level, if you want to maximize your ministry, then you need to become a CTA Insider. Go to churchtrainingacademy.com/join and find out how you can join all the other cool people like you in the Church Media Insiders group. We want you to have access to Justin and I, and the knowledge that we're bringing to the table and the years of experience that we're bringing to the table. But we also want you to have access to all the other people that are just like you, who are learning how to use their media, use the technology, maximize their ministry and all that. And, one of the best things that I learned is that that making mistakes is the best way to learn. But the best way to really learn is to learn from the mistakes that other people made. And that's one of the things that we do in there, is that when one of us has done something and it didn't work and the others have helped us figure out how to make it work, we then share that information so that everyone else doesn't have to, make the same mistakes that we do. You can kind of take the shortcut and be successful quicker and faster because someone else has already kind of blazed that trail, just do what they did, and it works and all that. So anyway, go to churchtrainingacademy.com/join, find out how you can join. Guys, I hope this has been helpful. I hope that you, if you've not been thinking about podcasting, if you've not been thinking about doing the next level, putting it in people's hands when they want it, as they want it, in the flavors that they want it and stuff. If you've not been thinking like that, it's time to start thinking like that. So take what we've been talking about today, take what we learned from Paul, and go out there and change lives.